All right, so have you ever thought about that age-old question?
Yeah.
City slicker or country bumpkin?
Ah,
It's a big one, right?
huge.
But lucky for you, someone sent us this podcast script that really digs into city versus village life. And we're going to do a deep dive on it today.
Perfect.
But we're not just going to do the usual pros and cons list, right?
Right.
We're going deeper
Yeah,
to the stuff that makes you rethink the whole thing.
I like it.
Let's jump right in. So, how does this script define city versus village?
Well, I think they captured the essence of each pretty well, you know?
Yeah.
The city's that fast-paced, nonstop environment,
Yeah.
that hub for, like, all this activity and opportunity. But then they contrast that with the village, right?
Okay.
And they use this really beautiful language talking about how villages are, like, nestled in nature with a slower rhythm of life and air that's so clean and crisp.
I love that. It sounds so peaceful.
Right. It paints this picture of tranquility.
Yeah.
But they also emphasize something else that I think is really important. Deeply rooted community ties.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Not just friendly neighbors, but like a true sense of belonging, you know?
And that's something that you don't always get in the city, right? Okay, so let's say you're not living off the land or anything.
Yeah.
How does the whole work and economy thing differ between the two?
Well, we always hear about the city having all the job opportunities.
Yeah.
And in terms of volume, that might be true, you know, sheer numbers and all that.
Right.
But there's some interesting research out there that suggests that village economies are becoming super resilient these days.
Really?
Yeah, they're often built around these awesome local businesses,
Huh.
sustainable agriculture, and there's often a strong spirit of collaboration in villages too,
Yeah, I could see that.
which can be super appealing, especially to certain personality types.
Absolutely. You know, that reminds me of the story I read about a small village in Italy. They revitalized their entire economy by focusing on these artisanal crafts and sustainable tourism, and it was so inspiring.
It totally challenges that old assumption that you have to be in the city to find fulfilling work.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about work. What about getting around?
Oh, transportation. That's where things get a little ironic, I think.
Totally, because the city has all the options, right?
Right.
Buses, trains, subways, you name it.
You'd think it'd be easy.
But it's always so crowded.
Yeah, it's always packed and it's slow.
Ugh, don't even get me started on the traffic.
Right, and all that time stuck in traffic, it takes a toll, you know?
Oh, yeah?
Not just on our schedules, but our mental well-being, too.
Okay, so what about in the village?
Well, you might need a car in the village, but just picture this. Open roads, no traffic lights, just you and the scenery.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Just
Yeah.
cruising along.
Right. And our source actually mentioned this study where people living in more rural areas said they felt less stressed during their commutes, even if they were longer in distance.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, what about the environment? That's got to be a big difference between the city and the village.
It's a huge difference, and this source really drives that point home.
Yeah.
They describe cities as being choked with noise pollution.
Oh, yeah.
Air pollution, it's like a constant assault on your senses, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
And then, of course, they contrast that with the village, where you've got the pristine air and those soothing sounds of nature.
Exactly. It's like a breath of fresh air.
Right, and they tie that into the growing body of research on how nature impacts our well-being.
Okay, tell me more.
So studies have shown that being exposed to nature can actually reduce stress,
Wow, I believe that.
improve your cognitive function, and even boost your immune system.
It makes you think, you know?
Yeah,
Like, are we really doing ourselves any favors by living in these concrete jungles?
it's a question worth asking.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already, but before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we got to talk about social life.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
How does that stack up in the city versus the village?
This is where it gets really interesting. I think we all associate cities with that vibrant social scene, right?
Totally. Endless possibility.
Right, so many options for meeting people, going out, having fun, all that jazz. But our source highlights this paradox.
The paradox. Okay,
Mm.
I'm intrigued.
They argue that while you've got all this constant activity in the city, there's also this huge potential for loneliness.
Oh, I can see that.
They cite a study that found people living in urban areas were actually more likely to report feeling isolated and socially disconnected.
Yeah, you know, it's like you're surrounded by people, but you still feel invisible.
Exactly, and they contrast that with village life, where social life is all about genuine connection,
Mm-hmm.
shared experiences, traditions, festivals, community gatherings.
It sounds almost idyllic.
It kind of does, right? And it makes you wonder if maybe in our pursuit of this fast-paced, individualistic city life, we've sacrificed something truly essential.
That's a really good point. This is giving me so much to think about already. We've covered a ton, but there's still so much more to explore. We'll be back to dive even deeper into the nuances of city versus village life after a quick break. All right, we're back. And I gotta say, I'm already thinking differently about this whole city versus village thing.
Awesome. That's what we like to hear.
So, where were we? Oh yeah, that whole paradox of city social life, how all the hustle and bustle doesn't necessarily equal genuine connection.
Right, exactly. And the source contrasts that with how villages prioritize those deeper, more intentional relationships.
Makes sense.
And it's not even just about being close physically, it's about that shared sense of belonging, that responsibility you feel for each other.
It really makes you wonder, have we traded depth for breadth when it comes to our social lives?
That's a great question, and it got me thinking about how these different environments, city versus village, might impact other parts of life too, like education.
Oh yeah, good point. I bet cities have way more schools and universities and all that.
For sure they do, and that's often seen as a big advantage.
Yeah.
But get this, the source highlights a study that found that smaller, rural schools tend to have way more parent involvement.
Really?
Yeah, and community engagement too.
So it's not just about how many resources there are, but the whole vibe of the learning environment.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
And that whole community support thing, it extends to healthcare as well.
Speaking of healthcare, I'm going to guess cities have the upper hand there, right? More hospitals, specialists, all the fancy tech and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But having access to all those things doesn't always mean better results, you know?
I see what you mean.
The source pointed out how village communities often really rally around anyone in need, providing that practical and emotional support, which is huge for healing and well-being.
Yeah, I can see that.
They actually mentioned a study that linked strong social support networks with people recovering faster and having lower rates of going back to the hospital.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I never thought about it that way.
Right. It really challenges that assumption that bigger is always better when it comes to healthcare.
Totally. Okay, let's lighten things up a bit. What about entertainment? I bet the script talks about the city's nightlife and all the cool events happening all the time.
They do mention that cities have tons of entertainment choices.
Right.
But they also highlight how villages have their own unique ways of having fun.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, a lot of it revolves around local traditions, those seasonal festivals, and just celebrating together as a community.
So it's less about passively consuming entertainment and more about actively creating it together.
That's it. They even quoted a cultural anthropologist who studied these village festivals in Europe.
Cool.
And she found that these events create a sense of shared identity, and they really strengthen those social bonds within the community.
I love that. It reminds me of those old-fashioned town picnics you see in movies sometimes.
Yeah, there's something really special about that.
It speaks to a totally different pace of life.
Exactly. The pace of life. That's a huge difference between city and village life, for sure.
For sure. What does the source say about that?
Well, they describe city life as constantly being on the go, you know?
Oh, yeah.
With all that emphasis on speed, efficiency, individual achievement.
Right.
It can be exhilarating, but man, it can be exhausting too.
I feel that.
They even quoted this psychologist who specializes in stress management.
What did he say?
He said, "The city never sleeps, and neither do its inhabitants."
Ugh, it's so true. Always rushing, always checking emails, always feeling behind.
So how would you describe the pace of village life then?
I'd say it's all about slowing down, enjoying those simple things, connecting with nature.
Spot on. The source uses words like grounded, in tune with natural rhythms, and unhurried.
I like that, unhurried.
It creates this image of a life that's way more in sync with our natural rhythms. And get this, they cited a study that found people in rural areas had lower levels of cortisol, which is that stress hormone.
No way. So living a slower pace actually means you're healthier and less stressed.
The research seems to suggest that, yeah.
That's wild.
And it goes beyond just how fast or slow you move. It's about how you interact with people, too.
I bet they talk about how everyone in the village knows each other and stops to chat on the street.
It's even deeper than that. The source says the pace of life actually shapes our whole way of being.
What do you mean?
Like in cities, those interactions tend to be brief, transactional.
Oh, yeah.
You're grabbing coffee, you're rushing to a meeting, barely making eye contact.
Tell me about it. I've become a master at dodging slow walkers on the sidewalk.
Haha, right. Whereas in villages, they describe those interactions as way more deliberate, personal.
Okay.
They quote this sociologist who studied communication patterns in rural communities.
What did she find?
She found that people in villages are way more likely to practice something called deep listening, meaning they actually pay attention to what the other person is saying and feeling.
That's so important. It makes you realize how much we miss when we're always rushing and distracted.
For sure, and it's a reminder that the way we live shapes not just our external experiences, but our inner world as well.
Man, this deep dive has been full of surprises. I'm seeing this whole city versus village thing in a whole new light.
That's what we love to hear. But hold on, we're not done yet. There's one more big question to tackle.
Okay, lay it on me.
Is one lifestyle actually better than the other?
All right, I'm on the edge of my seat. What does the script say? Spill the beans. Is it city life or village life? Which one wins?
Well, it's not that simple. The script says there's no one right answer.
Figures.
It all comes down to your values, your personality, what you're looking for in life.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges.
Exactly. But here's where things get really interesting. They bring up this third option, a hybrid lifestyle.
A hybrid. Wait, you mean combining city and village living somehow?
Yeah. It's not as wild as it sounds. The script talks about folks who choose to live just outside the city, so they get that little bit of space and nature. Right. But they can still easily access all those city perks.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, balancing the two worlds.
It's the idea.
But how realistic is that, really?
Actually, it's more doable than ever, especially with remote work being so common now.
Oh, true?
You could have a high-powered job in the city, but live in a peaceful village.
I like that.
They even mentioned a study where remote workers said they were happier with their work-life balance,
Nice.
and they felt more connected to their communities.
It's like you're not limited by location anymore.
Exactly.
You can create a lifestyle that truly fits you.
That's the beauty of it. And it goes beyond just work, You can even curate your social life.
How so?
Mix those city friends with your village connections. Get that diversity of perspectives, but still have those deep, meaningful relationships too.
Like a custom social circle.
Yeah, exactly. And then think about leisure time.
Okay.
You could enjoy those city museums and theaters,
Right.
but also prioritize those weekends hiking in the mountains or maybe tending your garden in the village.
This whole hybrid idea is amazing. It's like weaving together a life with threads from both places.
I love that analogy. And the best part is, you're the one holding the needle. You get to design the life that truly reflects what you want.
So for all those listeners out there wrestling with this city versus village dilemma,
Right.
it doesn't have to be one or the other.
You can have your cake and eat it too.
That's what I'm talking about. Maybe it's not about picking sides, but finding that special blend that makes you feel, truly alive.
Exactly.
This deep dive has been so insightful. I started with a million questions, and now I feel like I've got a whole new way of looking at things.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Sometimes a fresh perspective can open up a world of possibilities.
For sure.
So to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you something to think about. Maybe you'll realize you're drawn to that city energy or that village peace.
Or even that intriguing hybrid path.
Whatever you choose, remember, the most important thing is to create a life that feels genuinely yours.
Well said. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.